You can go into the question section and type in your question or raise your hand, and he can unmute you to get your feedback or questions at that point in time during the presentation. So, Steve, it's all yours, buddy.
Great. Thanks for attending the webinar today. Really happy that you guys are attending the webinar. This is a webinar that's hosted by the Facilities and Operations Committee of GLCUHO. And today we are going to be hearing from our expert here at IU on bed bugs and what training we do for our university employees. I thought this would be really valuable for all of us as housing professionals, everyone from frontline RAs to senior housing officers that will need to know how to identify, how to speak to the public, how to talk to parents about bed bugs. But first we'll go into some training in terms of identification and some real bed bug basics, I guess, if you will. So let me introduce Graham McKean. Graham is with our IU Office of Environmental Health and Safety. And Graham has agreed to be our speaker today and will be doing this presentation. When we're done with the presentation, we will go through and answer all the questions, as many questions as we can. And then at the end, I'll remind you that we will have this presentation posted on the GLCUHO website so that you can go there, and we'll have additional attachments, not just a presentation, but background information on bed bugs, etc. So there will actually be more on the website with the webinar archive than you'll see today. So without further ado, here is Graham McKean.
Good afternoon. Before we start itching today, did want to thank Steve Akers from IU's RPS for having me. This training is pretty much tailored just for IU university employees. More of our frontline employees, such as our maintenance staff, housekeeping, RAs and resident managers. We will have some time for some extra discussion and questions afterwards. Bed bugs have been a pretty big part of my life the last 10 months or so here at IU. Over the previous 4 years, I think we only had 2 infestations, and this last school year we had 8 separate infestations, so it's definitely becoming quite the issue. So the goals of the training today will be identification, biology and behavior of bed bugs, how to conduct inspections and look for signs of infestations, prevention, eradication, and treatment, which is difficult, monitoring and follow-ups, which are vital to bed bug management, responding and reporting, providing education and awareness to staff, students, and guests of your educational institutions, and at the end, like I said, we'll have some questions and discussion. Bed bugs are definitely back. There's been quite an exponential resurgence maybe in the last 5 to 15 years. Definitely recent reemergence in the United States. They were nearly eradicated after World War II due to our extensive use of pesticides such as DDT, which have since been banned due to their toxicity. And they can be found anywhere from homeless shelters to the cleanest and dirtiest environments to high-end hotels. We had one issue last fall semester and a residence hall that had only been open for 2 weeks, so they can pop up quickly. And a lot of this is also due to just increased and easier travel, international travel. Here at IU, we have one of the higher international student populations in the country, so that kind of increases our risk as well. The issue with bed bugs, many would agree they are the most difficult, common pest to eradicate in the United States. Extremely difficult and costly to eradicate. For one example, we had an institution on campus that spent probably $35,000 over the course of about 3 treatments to finally eradicate the pests. They are definitely very small and hard to see, especially the nymphs. They're a lot smaller than the adults. Very good at hiding and hitchhiking. Actually, pretty darn fast for their size. They do not fly. They crawl rather quickly. Very reclusive. They can also go without feeding for long periods of time. Some of our research has suggested that they can maybe go up to 20 months without a blood meal. So just vacating a property for a year or so would not necessarily fix the problem, although most adults do not live that long. And they will follow a blood meal room to room. They will travel about 100 feet typically to find a blood meal, which doesn't seem that far, but in as you can imagine, university housing settings, 100 feet might be a room or two, just due to the size of the rooms. But really the key to all of bed bug management is just quickly identifying and quickly responding to the infestation. A little bit about their biology and identification. They lay about 1 to 5 eggs a day, 12 max, and about 200 to 500 in their lifespan. Research we have suggested has suggested up to 540 eggs in their lifetime. They do place eggs on hard surfaces such as wood or paper, and the eggs typically hatch about after 10 days. The eggs will typically remain stuck in place, which is another good indication of infestation. They will, but they're very hard to see. They're very small, so you might need a magnifying glass or something to be able to see those. But that is another good sign of an infestation. Adults live about 10 to 18 months, and obviously, as you can see from the eggs they lay, they can multiply rather quickly, especially if there's no intervention that takes place. Typically only come out at night and hide in crevices during the day, and predominantly hitchhike on luggage, clothing, and furniture. They can hitchhike on humans, it's a little less likely. And I did skip a slide, so I've got to go back here. There we go. This is what I meant to initially talk about in identification. They're a blood-sucking ectoparasite, which means that they need a host to survive. Humans are the preferred and predominant host. They thrive and grow the best with human blood, but they will feed on small mammals and birds. And adults are about 1/8 to 1/5 of an inch long. They are visible, they're not microscopic, and females are slightly larger than the males. They're oval-shaped and kind of reddish-brown or mahogany in color. They have a very, very flat body. They can get into the smallest of places, behind wallpaper, behind electrical and light switches, long, slender legs. They do have 6 legs. They have a segmented proboscis, and what that means is they have a beak, and the beak is pretty much underneath the body until they begin to bite, and when they bite, that extends out, and there's 2 prongs there that they use to get their blood meal. There are immature stages, such as the nymphs, very similar to adults, but much smaller, about 1/16 to 3/16 of an inch, so pretty hard to see. And they are lighter in color, and almost kind of transparent looking. They do require blood in order to complete their life cycle, or molt. They do have 5 molt stages, so they need to take 5 blood meals before they become an adult. And depending on the availability of the hosts, that can take anywhere from 5 weeks to 4 months. They are attracted to body heat and CO2. They can actually sense both of these. And like I said, once they extend that proboscis and begin biting, they inject with one of the prongs an anticoagulant to keep the blood host flowing, and another one injects a numbing saliva to keep the host from feeling the feeding, which typically lasts about 3 to 10 minutes. Bites usually do not appear instantly. It might take a day or two. It is possible they could wake up with bites, but it usually takes about a day or two to show up. They're not very painful and often never felt, especially if they're asleep. It might feel like a pinprick. And they do not typically feed daily, which kind of leads to a little bit more difficulty in the management of bed bugs. They might feed every 3 to 7 days. So that adds to some of the challenges in management and eradication, but does point to the importance of follow-ups and monitoring to make sure that they are, in fact, eradicated. So here's 5 stages, and then to adult. Each one does have some different sizes there as well. It does show the egg as well, which is only about 1 millimeter long, so it does take a while to get there. But once they go through the 5 stages and become an adult, they can take repeated blood meals. So here are the pictures. Here's some pictures of the eggs themselves, and like I said, they're pretty darn small. As you can see in this picture on the left, that is a mattress seam, so you can see how close up that is. But those, as you can see there, those are stuck in place, so that is another good indication if you have a magnifying glass and are able to see those if you're doing inspections and looking for bed bugs. Here are some pictures of the nymphs. Like we said, they're a little less pigmented, a little more transparent. And you can kind of see the guy in the bottom right there is a little more elongated. Looks like he recently had a meal. And here's some pictures of the adults. You can kind of see, again, some of the varying colors and shapes. Again, the guy in the bottom right looks like he recently had a meal there. Risk to health. Luckily, there is no known disease spread or caused by bed bugs and their bites. Many feel that is due to the fact that they need a host to survive. It would be no incentive for them to harm their host. But they can cause bites, producing red welts, itching, and possible allergic or skin reactions. Another thing that makes bed bugs very difficult to manage is the fact that about 20% of the human population are asymptomatic entirely to the bites, so nothing will show up. So in case they don't see some of the signs or the bugs themselves, they might not know that they have a problem. They are definitely annoying, definitely a nuisance, kind of a quality of life issue. It can turn the heaviest of sleepers into insomniacs within a week or so. Definitely makes people anxious, can be a catalyst for some mental issues. One student that we talked with fall semester last year was in the business school, had a lot of tests coming up, and he was saying, it was really affecting his schoolwork. Another researcher on campus here said it was affecting his research because he wasn't getting sleep, waking up thinking that they're crawling all over him, and in fact they might not be. But there are some rare but possible secondary infections due to scratching of bites and introducing outside bacteria to the wound. Treatment for the bites, so if you have people that are being bitten and they want some medical advice, you could send them to the doctor. That's mainly if they experience severe allergic reactions or skin reactions, and that doctor may prescribe or recommend oral antibiotics or histamines. But usually the treatment is just aimed at relieving symptoms, which could be handled by just purchasing over-the-counter topical cream or cortisone, basically to relieve the itching. You do want to communicate to them that they want to try to prevent itching, which I know can be hard. Bites usually do resolve within 1 to 2 weeks, but it does take some time. Here are some pictures of some of the bites. As you can see, it does look pretty severe. Bed bugs will look for a blood vessel, and once they find that blood vessel or area, they will try to usually bite in a line. So that might be an indication. It's very hard to distinguish bed bug bites from other bug bites, but you might try to look for some of these lines. As you can see in most of these pictures, there are some areas where it kind of looks like they're biting in a line there. So that might be an indication of bed bug bites. Signs of infestation, some things to look for. Obviously, if you see live bed bugs, that's always a good sign, or if they're being bitten. One of the best indicators, since they're pretty hard to see or find, especially during the day, is small blood stains. They will leave blood stains on sheets, mattresses, around beds, headboards, and other hiding spots such as wallpaper, behind picture frames, that kind of stuff. They also do leave excrement, kind of like a dark-colored stain or bumps at the entry of hiding places. In very highly infested areas, you can actually smell the infestation. It's kind of a sweet yet really foul odor, once described to me as rotten meat kind of smell. But there is a scent. They also, when they molt, they shed their skin, so that you might be able to find cast or shed skins along with the eggs that might be in some of these hiding areas or crevices. So here are some pictures. I know I think it's after lunch now, but the top left here is a good picture because that shows some of the eggs, some of the excrement, and some of the staining. Picture to the top right does have some stains there, as well as the cast skin here on the bottom left. So these are really good indications of infestations. This way you don't necessarily need to find the bug itself to know that there has been an issue or currently is an issue. So if you're going to be doing inspections yourself, there are definitely some tools that you're going to want to use. Visual inspections are definitely encouraged. However, research has suggested they're only about 60% effective. That's, again, due to their great hiding and reclusive characteristics. There are canine inspections that we have used at a couple instances on campus which all research suggests are about 90 to 98% accurate. Again, they can smell the bed bugs. But some items to have in your toolkit if you're going to be out there doing some of this stuff is obviously a magnifying glass, a strong flashlight, plastic Ziploc bags for collecting the specimens, and some tweezers to collect specimens. Probes such as a credit card tool, and you can make that by cutting a credit card kind of diagonally, and that will allow you to get back in behind loose wallpaper, electrical plates, baseboards, those kind of things, cracks and crevices. Pyrethrin or compressed air could be used to flush out the bed bugs from some of these hiding spots, or maybe we'll flush out some excrement or eggs or cat skins that you could observe. Screwdrivers and a small toolkit for removing light plate switches, electrical plates, or disassembling furniture, especially upholstered furniture they tend to like. Alcohol, glass, or baby wipes, cotton swabs can be used. Might need to be put on the end of a paper clip or something to check behind some of these areas. That'll might produce the blood stain, and that way you would know that those are in fact blood stains and that they might have an issue there. And sticky traps and other monitors, which we'll talk about a little bit later, may be useful if they're placed in and around the bedding area and checked on a regular basis. Might also encourage training for your staff that might be conducting inspections. A little bit on might need some PPE such as some boot covers or just tucking your pant legs. Conduct in the rooms, making sure people aren't leaning or sitting on the beds, and being wary of what they bring into the room. Make sure that's elevated, that kind of stuff. So where to look? Well, they could basically hide just about anywhere, and in the university setting, the rooms are pretty small, and like I said, they travel about 100 feet. So they could be really anywhere, but about 85% of the time, bed bugs are found in and around the bedding area. Obviously, it might be best to inspect at night, might have the best results. But you really want to check around your mattress seams and in around the bedding. Box springs, they have those staples and the cloth underneath a lot of times. Those are great hiding spots for bed bugs. Any of the construction points, wood seams, they really do like wood as well. Any box spring or any wooden furniture around the area. Bed frames and headboards, around cracks and crevices, wood supports, and other hardware. As we talked about, cleanliness isn't really an issue, but clutter can be. If there are items stored on the floor in the closet that typically are undisturbed, those areas should be checked as well, because it's a great hiding spot for them, especially if it's undisturbed. Obviously, bed linen and clothing would be another good area to check. As we mentioned, behind wall-mounted objects such as picture frames, especially ones around the bed. Upholstered and wooden furniture, along all their seams, under their cushions, underside of each piece, again, all the construction points, typically are a little less likely to be found in plastic or metal furniture, so it might be a design consideration. Cracks and crevices in wood molding, baseboards, in the bedding area. Under the edge of wall-to-wall carpeting, under loose wallpaper, and as we mentioned before, behind electrical panels and light switches are another good spot. Prevention, there's probably no silver bullet or 100% way to prevent them from coming into your facility, but there are definitely some things you could do to try to minimize that risk. And obviously, probably the first thing is just to educate residents and guests about bed bugs, their signs, and how to identify them. The more they're educated about it, the less likely they are to freak out or be concerned, and more likely to probably tell you about a problem. They should not be ashamed to report this to you. You could recommend that they do routine self-inspections occasionally, do some of their own monitoring. Obviously, if they have a problem, they'll probably be getting bit, so that would be a good indication. You might want to consider either at least advising caution or maybe even restricting acquiring used furniture and other items. Obviously, we're in a college town here, as well as most of you guys probably, and dumpster diving occurs twice a year pretty heavily around the area. So we would always want to be wary of used furniture. That actually was the source of an infestation we had in a Greek house on campus. And then maybe advise them when they're traveling, because we do have a lot of academic breaks and whatnot, to check their hotel beds, keep luggage elevated away from beds and upholstered surfaces, and check their luggage and contents when returning from traveling. And if they're coming back from a suspected area, we want to advise them to immediately wash and dry all their clothing. Some other things that the student can do, or housing staff, is it's always recommended to change the bed linens about once per week, especially if you're having a problem in an area. And washing those in hot water and a hot dryer cycle. Actually, a hot dryer cycle will kill bed bugs. They can be killed by heat. Obviously, you want to make sure that dryer cycle can get up pretty high, probably around 120 degrees. A regular vacuum regimen is definitely suggested as well. A regular, decently powered vacuum will remove bed bugs from their hiding places if we get the wand out and get some of those cracks and crevices. And if you're using a vacuum that has vacuum bags, you want to make sure that you seal the bag and dispose of it properly. And if it's a known infestation and you're vacuuming, you might even want to label it as bed bug infested, so nobody would take it out there. I don't know why anybody would take a vacuum bag, but you never know. Staff, it would definitely be recommended for maintenance, maybe in your summer downtime, to maybe do some spot checks of housing areas. Look for any cracks and crevices, in the floors, walls, and ceilings that can prevent harborage areas and not give them a place to hide. And again, if you're discarding infested items, we want to make sure we dismantle or destroy it to where it's unusable. Again, label it as bed bugs, seal it up, and discard it properly. Some items that we've had here at the university we've taken directly to the dump, so that's something to consider. Staff could also consider mattress encasements, and you can use this as a preventative measure so that the bed bugs cannot get into the bed, or as a post-treatment measure after the area has been treated. They can put this mattress encasement over the bed, and that way if there are any live bugs, they cannot get out of the encasement. And again, we talked about them being able to survive a long period of time without a blood meal, so that encasement might need to stay in there even a year or more. Eradication. First thing we want to do is make sure that what we have is a bed bug. Here at IU, our pest management is rather decentralized. Each of our Greek houses has their own contract, as well as our residence halls and our hotels, and so on and so forth, even our real estate agency. So you want to contact either whoever your contracted pest management professional is, or an entomologist, or someone who's fairly trained in bed bugs to be able to identify the bed bug. Just so that we know that it is in fact a bed bug, and we can then handle the infestation appropriately. As we said, it's very difficult to eradicate. There's really no silver bullet, and they're becoming increasingly resistant to a lot of pesticides. But we want to make sure that the treatment and application is performed by a pest management professional. If you do not feel that your contracted pest management professional is knowledgeable on bed bugs, seek out someone who is. You can ask them questions, make sure that they have proper responses, so on and so forth. But the PMP should be contacted immediately, and they will come out and investigate and inspect the areas. We always recommend in every infestation to inspect all adjacent rooms above and below and either side, that kind of thing, because they can travel, especially through pipe chases or something like that in a room. But the PMP will give you recommendations for the owner of the facility as well as the tenant. They might have some preparation items or things that will need to be done prior to treatment. And obviously they have all the correct licensure, proper equipment, safety precautions, and you know how to apply pesticides correctly. And I would also request a bed bug management plan. That would just basically state out, this is the location, this is the level of infestation, this is what we're going to do to treat it, this is what we're going to do to provide follow-ups and monitoring, and so on and so forth. And I would always request the material safety data sheet for any of the insecticides that may be used in the room. If you might have a highly susceptible person or somebody that has a reaction, and that MSDS sheet might give you an indication of whether that reaction is due to the insecticide that was used. But each infestation is unique in scope, so making sure that they provide some specific information on how they're going to handle it to you will be of a great benefit. Eradication continued. One of the first things we want to do, depending on the treatment, now heat treatments, ambient heat treatments, which we'll talk about in a little bit, you do not necessarily need to remove bedding or clothing. It's one of the benefits of that, because removing these items kind of increases your risk of spreading them elsewhere. But if it's going to be chemically treated, we want to make sure we get all the clothing and bedding bagged and laundered in very hot soapy water and or placed in the hot dryer, on a hot dryer cycle. They do make dissolvable laundry bags now, which kind of decreases your risk of transporting the bugs in regular plastic bags. The bag will dissolve in the wash cycle. But after the items have been washed, we'll obviously place in new bags and seal those up. You might not want to remove or put those back into the room until treatment has occurred, or maybe even until a follow-up has occurred. Items that cannot be washed should be placed in the dryer under hot heat for 30 minutes. You might be asked to dispose of additional items, and as we talked about, we want to make sure we dispose of those properly and label those or make them unusable. And one of the biggest keys, because if there's one step that is not followed in the PMP's recommendations for treatment and so on, you might just be reintroducing or moving the infestation elsewhere. So we really need to stress cooperation between the resident, the facility owner, as well as the pest management professional. Multiple treatments may be needed. It's very common for multiple treatments. I would not be overly concerned if you have to go back and do a second or third treatment. We've definitely had to do this in some of our areas as well, just because they're so good at doing what they do to the bed bugs. So, treatment options. Obviously, we just want to pretty much go with what our pest management professional will recommend for us, but we want to work with them and coordinate the best and proper treatment for your facility. There are insecticides out there that can be used effectively. As we said, they're growing resistance to many of them. So there are some that are bed bug approved. And one resource, which is a great resource we'll talk about later, I believe it's the National Council for Healthy Homes. It's called What's Working for Bed Bug Control in Multifamily Housing. Document that was released in February of this year. Excellent, excellent resource. Doesn't really talk about biology, behavior, identification, but really just mainly sticks with what's working, what hasn't worked, what treatment methods have been working, what haven't been working. And it actually does list all the EPA-approved pesticides for bed bugs in that document. But it's very difficult in a lot of cases to get the insecticide to the areas of where the bed bugs are hiding. So that adds kind of another layer of difficulty. Some that we've used on campus here is Suspend, Phantom, which is a pyrrole, and Gentrol, which is a insect growth regulator, and that will actually make the bed bugs sterile so they cannot reproduce. There are some residual dusts that have been applied, such as boric acid and diatomaceous earth, and what that does is it will be laid on the floor around these cracks and crevices and whatnot, and it actually scratches up the waxy bodies of the bed bugs and kills them. As we mentioned before, there are ambient heat treatments out there, and all research seems to indicate that this is currently the best method of eradication. There are many companies in the Midwest that do have this type of treatment. And I wouldn't maybe say no chemicals used, but there's definitely a lot less chemicals used in this treatment process. And here at IU, we're going to try to recommend, or maybe even try to require, using this for multiple room infestations and areas where we have highly susceptible populations. Again, we want to try to minimize the risk of insecticide exposure and try to minimize the use of insecticides in general. But with bed bugs, it's pretty difficult, so that might not be able to be avoided completely. One thing that we have been considering at the university is actually purchasing the equipment to do these heat treatment methods ourselves, because they are quite costly, and it can end up saving the university a lot of money over time. Here are some pictures of a heat treatment method that we did at a facility here on campus. And the top left there, you can see that's just a propane tank into a direct fire heater. Then some ventilation tubes going up into the infested areas. And you can see in the middle picture there, we have some fans to circulate the air as well as a HEPA filter. And what we'll do, or what the pest management professional will do, is set up temperature monitoring, some probes, some thermometers, in various areas throughout the room, in the mattresses, maybe in the walls. Try to get them back into some of these good hiding areas and areas that might be a little harder to heat up. And so what they'll do is they'll monitor those temperature records until they reach about 130 degrees. The ambient air in there might be about 150. And they use that for about 4 to 5 hours. And that seems to be pretty effective in killing off bed bugs. I think their eggs, are start to die around 113 degrees in adults, around 115. But it seems to be very effective thus far. Again, monitoring and follow-up, definitely very important, extremely important to set up monitoring and definitely do at least a couple follow-ups. Obviously, the tenants play a really important role in monitoring because they're the ones sleeping there. They're going to be kind of your frontline defense there. As we said, follow-up, we're going to at least require 2 follow-ups at IU, and they should occur about 1 to 2 weeks post-treatment. We talked about the eggs taking about 10 days to hatch and the fact that bed bugs might not feed for a week or so. So that'll give us some time to really make sure that the infestation is completely eradicated. And obviously any signs of infestation after a follow-up should be handled immediately and might require additional treatment. Some monitoring devices that can be used. Again, that National Center for Healthy Housing document does have a lot of these items kind of listed in it. One that seems to be really good, if you see in the top right here, this is either a bed post or a furniture post that has a double-cupped insect monitor underneath the leg. And so what that is, there's some type of textured outside where they can crawl up, and then in the middle, there might be some talcum powder, maybe just a really slick surface, depending on the one that you use. And so they will climb up trying to reach the person, the host, and will fall into this first cup, and they won't be able to get out of it. So that's kind of a good indicator that they've been using. Obviously, glue boards and sticky boards and traps can be used. Glass and metal jars could also be placed with the bed post inside of the jar. They are not too good at climbing up glass and metal. Recently I've read about petroleum jelly being used. Obviously it kind of might be messy or a little sticky, but that can be placed around the bed posts as well or other areas and they will get stuck, which will tell you if that you do have a problem or not. And the bottom left is a homemade monitor. There are commercial monitors that are rather expensive, but they will produce CO2 and heat, which attracts the bed bugs to it. These homemade monitors and the commercial monitors I just mentioned probably would be best in areas where tenants are not currently sleeping. But the homemade monitor, basically it's a dog or cat bowl, flipped upside down with some tape on the outside again to give it some texture to climb up. We put talcum powder in on the outside, and we have this cooler here that you can see, and we fill that with dry ice, and the dry ice will give off CO2. This one in the picture does not have any type of heating mechanism, but so occasionally we'll put a few hand warmers or foot warmer pads in there maybe to give off some heat. We'll try to set this up at night. And we don't want to put too much dry ice in the container because too much will cause a lot of condensation. It will be rather cold. We have yet to catch a bed bug, but hopefully that means that there are no bed bugs in these places that we've been monitoring, but we have caught other bugs with it, so it does have some effective use. So responding to complaints, what do you do when you get a call? Obviously, we want to handle them all seriously, even if they are false alarms. And we want to respond to them swiftly. The quicker, the better. And documentation. It's really good to have all basic information relating to the infestation. The kind of the who, what, where's, when and whys, and hows should all be documented. We actually have created a database which we have yet to send out to our housing entities, but it's basically a database that we can maybe provide a link to on the webinar website after this webinar. And it just kind of goes through just saying, what room, who reported it, who treated it, when was it inspected, when was it followed up on, those kind of things. You might want to ask the person if they have an idea of the possible source, because you might need to contact people that might be a source of the infestation. You can ask them if they've been traveling or visiting other people or had visitors themselves. But obviously when this happens, if we haven't set up some type of awareness and education program for them yet, we want to give them some education material to kind of quell their fears. We also want to take measures to calm the person down. there have said. Bed bug infestations are common and becoming increasingly common. One thing we definitely want to do is disallow and discourage any tenant from treating infestation themselves. We do not want them possibly harming themselves or others with the use of bombing, fogging, or other pesticides, all of which are really pretty ineffective. And then we also want to encourage their cooperation. We understand it's a difficult time for them, but they need to do what we and the pest management professionals tell them to best manage the infestation. So reporting. The way we have this structured, it might be, if you haven't already, set up some type of reporting lines on who should be notified of infestations. Here at IU, we notify the administration, our media relations office, the local health department, and then that kind of brings up a point. We really want to stress that it's really ineffective if you don't take a kind of a community-wide approach. So we're kind of trying to start doing that, involving some of the local health departments, local housing authorities, just so that way we can kind of get a grasp on how vast the inspection may be. We have many students that live off campus as well. But the way we have it set up, we want to notify our upper management immediately of any reported or suspected infestation. And we have a responsible person with each housing entity that will be kind of in charge of handling bed bug infestations. And that person will be contacting their contracted pest management professional or other PMP they decide to use. And obviously we'll get them out there and inspect the room quickly. But like I said, definitely want to designate maybe at least one person per housing residence for bed bug coordination, that kind of stuff. If a bed bug presence is confirmed, we have an EHS office, which I'm from, that we're kind of notified, and we kind of provide educational information, assistance, and maybe some type of consulting. Another thing to consider too, like I said, we do have a media relations office, but you might get a lot of inquiries from the media. Media seem to love the bed bug kind of story, which I think more and more will be less of a negative connotation since they're so prevalent. But should be handled, according to whatever media policy you have at your university. And you might want to designate a public information officer that's knowledgeable on the subject to handle these kind of things. Again, one of the biggest components is education and awareness. Obviously, we want to raise awareness and education of the residents and guests. The more people are informed, the more likely they're going to recognize the signs earlier and report infestations to you. We also don't want to sound like an alarmist. We just want to make sure that it's more of an advisory thing. Hey, they're here. This is what they look like. Keep a lookout. It'll make everybody's job easier and their lives easier if we report these quickly. So earlier detection leads to easier and less costly control. It's only going to be easier the earlier we get it done. So stressing that to the students and residents and guests will definitely be helpful in your management. Go ahead and post information at housing locations, our newsletters, again, in an advisory manner. Always a good item to have in staff or resident meetings, and it's always good to refresh maybe at least once a year about bed bugs. We have created a website that we can refer staff, students, managers to as well, and it's kind of a all-encompassing one-stop shop for those. And this year we do have plans to staff move-in week for our incoming freshmen, and we'll just disseminate some basic advisory information on bed bugs to them. But it's very important to train your housing staff as well. One thing that we've created that was very helpful is ID cards. So it's basically like a business card size identification cards, color printed, has some of the eggs, some of the blood stains, the nymphs and the adults on it, and some basic information about what they look like and where they might be. So those can be very helpful. But again, really the key to bed bug management is quick identification and response. Here are some resources I would definitely recommend checking out. Our website's up there. That is ehs.indiana.edu/bedbugs.shtml, and we can put all these resources on the website after the webinar is completed. A couple I do want to point out though is that National Center for Healthy Housing. Just do a Google search for NCHH bed bug control multifamily housing. That should come up. That's a rather large document, about 37 pages, and like I said, very excellent for just control and methods of treatment and eradication. New York versus bed bugs. Obviously, New York's had quite a big issue with bed bugs. That website, which is just New York versus bed bugs, all one word, believe.com, .org actually, .org. That is one of the best websites available anywhere. They have links to every really great resource that they can find all over the nation and the world. Central Ohio, Cincinnati area definitely had quite a large issue in the past, and they have some good stuff. Central Ohio Bedbug Task Force, those kind of things. But that's kind of where we are right now. Some other recommendations I might provide to you guys, which wasn't necessarily necessary for the training to our employees. We did create a task force, a bedbug task force, and that kind of entailed, consisted of members of all housing entities, our office, as well as subject matter experts, the State Department of Health, the local health department, and some local housing authorities. And that was done to just kind of discuss the issues that we've had, what's worked, what hasn't worked, where are we on the extent of infestations, develop some plans, develop some training, and that's been really helpful in our management of the issue. And again, I would stress that it's very important to have a community-wide approach in all of your bed bug management efforts. But I think that's really about it. If we have any other discussion or questions, we can get to those as well. But thank you very much.
Great. We're going to wait now and see if you guys have some questions that hopefully I'll be able to see your questions and then I can repeat them. Let's see. We were going to bring up some other info. This is just a reminder. Let's see. Where is it? I was going to bring up the Glakuho website. That's not it. Where we can show you, that's not it either. Just show you where we will archive this presentation so that you can look at it in the future, and then also have some other resources there as well that you can check on. We really did want to stress working with the public. I know that when our residents are coming in now, we're going to go ahead and insert into our A to Z guide under B. We'll have some information about bed bugs and talk, fairly openly about it, not to be too alarmist, but just to basically try and raise residents' awareness and education, and really stress that if they even think that they see them, and they might not be bed bugs, it might be something else, to let the RA know or let the resident manager or hall director know so that we can contact our pest control folks and they can go in and inspect it and literally that day know whether or not we have a problem or not. And that way we will minimize the effect of it and also calm people's fears, because naturally parents will get involved, etc. And the quicker we can have a licensed pest control come in and say, you know what, this is not bed bugs. And we've had quite a few of those come up this summer as well as last spring and ended up finding that it wasn't bed bugs at all. So that's really helped, again, with education. And I know we're really close to opening. We're almost to August 1st. So the timeliness to talk about this without, causing a panic is really good. So waiting to see if there's any questions that anybody might have. And seeing no questions, it looks like we might end here a little ahead of schedule. So again, I want to thank Graham McKean today for, oh, wait, we might have a question. Let's see if you can see it. Is that a question? Can't tell. Maybe no audio. See, that looks like we might have a question, but I don't know if I can actually see it. Oh, wait. Okay, here. We have one question from Keith McMath. What have you done to educate a population of students who travel frequently? So, again, what have we done here at IU to educate a population of students who travel frequently? And that's just not only our international students, but we have many students who will shoot up to Chicago on the weekend or to St. Louis. So, Graham?
Thank you. That's definitely a great question. And like Steve said, not only international travel, we have spring breaks, holiday breaks, those kind of things. And we have really yet to get, this has kind of become such an emergent issue just recently, we have really yet to get out to the students per se, face-to-face, but we do have some stuff on our website that does talk about some of the things we kind of mentioned earlier. When you do travel, you might be even want to do a self-inspection when you get to a hotel room or even wherever you're staying, hostel or a friend's house or whatever. And maybe just look around the headboard, mattress areas, seams, and look for those blood stains, look for signs of infestations. And then, like we had said, any of your luggage, whenever I go traveling now, I always keep it on the metal luggage rack, elevated. I might even check that luggage rack out real quick, too. But we want to keep that elevated and try to keep all of your luggage contained in one area and away from bedding and upholstered furniture items. And again, if they're bit while they're out, we will advise, or if they suspect maybe they've been in an area that's been infested, we will advise when they come back to, you basically immediately want to just immediately disrobe and take all of your other clothing and put that in the hot dryer cycle. And that's really the best you can do. And maybe do a brief inspection of your luggage as well. But that's about the best you can do when you're traveling, and what you can tell students when they are traveling themselves.
Yeah. Another thing, and not to repeat what Graham said, but when students are going to either off-campus homes or to hotels, to really do inspect the bed before you get into it, look at the seams, etc., and also the luggage, not putting the luggage right on the bed, say, for instance, and using that luggage rack, and then once they're back, once they leave, they'll be a little bit more confident that they're not, because as Graham said, the bed bugs will like to latch on to things and hitchhike and move about. So again, here we go with education, trying to educate so that people know what they're looking at.
We could also, I mean, you could always ask, have the students ask, especially if they're at a hotel. Now, will that hotel always be honest with you? I don't know, but you could ask if they've had issues in the past and that kind of stuff, and maybe get an idea of if they have a handle on it, or maybe if they've had issues in the past. So, additional thing they could do.
Okay. Great. You're welcome, Keith. That's great. That's the same question, actually, for Keith. Yeah.
One other thing I might mention, too, is something that we've put into draft form, but we have yet to release to all of our housing entities, is creating a bed bug management policy. We want to try to make, and that was kind of an effort of the task force, too, is to be consistent in the way that we educate, treat, follow up, and handle all these infestations. So another link I will put up there is kind of the management plan that I used as a template, and it's from Australia. But I'll make sure that Steve gets a link up there for that as well. But that's definitely very helpful. They also have a code of practices document, which is about 90 pages, very detailed, but very helpful as well. And that kind of talks about responsibilities of each of the tenants, staff, housing managers, and the pest management professional. Kind of spells out any kind of PPE or training they might each employee might need. It talks about conduct in infested rooms. So very helpful. It talks about the documentation, media handling. So I'll get a link to that set up as well. One great question that I think universities need to consider, and it did come up in one of our employee trainings, was a maintenance guy asked, well, say I'm working in an infested room, and I just by chance happen to bring him to my house, and all of a sudden I have an infestation at my house. Who foots that bill? I kind of circumvented answering that question correctly, because that's something we really haven't answered yet. But that's something that RPS at IU and other entities need to consider, because they did get exposed to that at work. So I thought that was an excellent question. That's something that we need to consider as well.
Okay. I see no more questions. I hope this has been helpful to everybody. Again, we'll post everything on the website so you can share it at your institutions. And thank you for for everyone joining the webinar today. Thanks again, and see you at the fall conference.